I was 26 the first time I truly believed I was going to own a home. Not some rented shoebox or someday fantasy, but an actual keys in my hand, floors I picked, mailbox with my name kind of home. I'd been saving for 6 years, ever, since I moved back in with my parents after college to help with bills. Every skipped coffee, every overtime shift, every birthday wish wrapped in someday soon. It was all for that down payment. My plan was quiet, responsible. I wasn't asking for help, but I did ask for one thing: that my parents let me keep living at home rent-free just a little longer. Not forever, just until I hit my savings goal. At first, they seemed supportive. My mom smiled in that vague way she does when she's not really listening. My dad gave a nod over the sports section, and then one Sunday after dinner, it came up again. "Well," my mom said casually, swirling her wine, "we do have that equity line of credit. Maybe we could use it for your down payment and you could pay us back monthly." I blinked. "I've already saved enough for the down payment. I'm just trying to stretch it to cover closing costs, too." She waved her hand like I was missing the point. "But wouldn't it feel better if it came from us? Like family helping family?" I wanted to believe her. Wanted to believe that maybe they were trying to give me a leg up. And I should have known better. A month later, I was at my bank, sitting across from the loan officer, waiting for the mortgage pre-approval. And he frowned. "There's been a hold on your account." My chest tightened. "What kind of hold?" "Apparently $38,000. My down payment had been withdrawn 3 days earlier, via check, signed by my father. I called my mom first." "Oh, sweetheart," she said brightly, like I was overreacting. "Your dad needed it for the house. The kitchen remodel was more than we expected, and we figured, well, you're still living here. It benefits you too." Silence. I couldn't breathe. "You took it?" "It's not taking, it's reallocating. We'll pay you back." "When?" "Soon. But honestly, maybe it's for the best. With housing prices right now, let's be real. You were never going to be able to afford a house on your own anyway." And just like that, the air left the room. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I didn't speak. I sat in my childhood bedroom, staring at the spreadsheets I'd been building. For years. All the budgeting, the trimming, the sacrifices. Gone. My sister, Brielle, texted me with a laughing emoji. "Mom said you freaked out about the money. Chill. It's just a kitchen lol." Her wedding had been 6 months earlier, fully funded by Mom and Dad, to the tune of $65,000, custom gown, ballroom venue, a literal flower ceiling. I hadn't asked for a dime. But now my dreams were disposable. The next morning, I checked the contractor's website. It showed a project, portfolio titled Luxury Kitchen Overhaul, Summer 2024. The photos? My parents' house. And standing there in the middle of it, hand on hip like a queen unveiling her throne, was my sister. Brielle. Not my mom. Brielle. That's when I realized the kitchen wasn't for them. It was for her. She and her new husband had moved back in, just for a few months. And now they were renovating around themselves. My parents didn't just steal my down payment. They used it to upgrade my sister's dream home. In my house. That weekend, I went to see a lawyer. Not because I thought I could sue, but because I needed to know what I could do. What rights I had. What paper trails existed. Because somewhere deep in my gut, something bitter and sharp was waking up. And it wasn't going to cry about kitchen tiles. It was going to make them choke on the mortgage they stole from me. To be continued. The lawyer's office smelled like old leather and printer toner. Everything was neat, polished, professional, the exact opposite of my boiling brain. I know it sounds crazy, I told Mr. Cardenas, tapping my nails against the cold metal arm of the chair. But the account was only under my name. My dad shouldn't have been able to write a check. He didn't say anything right away, just flipped through the paperwork I'd brought in. Bank statements, ID copies, even screenshots of text messages where my mom had acknowledged my down. Payment savings. Then he leaned back and gave me a tight smile. Well, the good news is, you're not crazy. And the better news is, this is technically theft. I blinked. Even if he's my father? Especially because he's your father. Financial exploitation isn't just limited to the elderly. You gave them no legal authorization to access your funds. That's a problem. For them. He slid a form across the desk. But whether or not you press charges is another conversation. I stared at the document. A simple complaint form. Cold. Stark. Real. I didn't fill it out. Not yet. I didn't want court. I wanted something else. Something slower. Smarter. Something they'd never see coming. Back home, the kitchen was almost unrecognizable. White marble. Counters. Gold cabinet pulls. Industrial gas range. And there was Betrayal. Leaning against the new island in workout leggings, drinking a smoothie she definitely didn't make herself. Hey, she said with a fake chirp. You see the backsplash? I picked it. Mom said I had a good eye. I clenched my teeth. Yeah, it looks expensive, she giggled. You're welcome. And just like that, I saw red. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. Instead, I got very quiet, and I started taking notes. Because if they thought I'd just move on, they didn't know me at all. I began by logging everything. When Betrayal and her husband were out. When contractors came. Which furniture was delivered. Every Venmo transaction my mom mentioned. Every Target bag I saw her carry in. I watched. And waited. And collected. Then I called my friend Zoe, who worked in real estate. I need to know something, I told her. Is there a way to find out if someone's refinancing their mortgage? She paused, then answered, Yeah. Why? I explained everything. 3 days later, she sent me a PDF. My parents had recently taken out an additional loan against the house. Over $80,000. They used it to fund the renovation, she said. Which means if the market dips even slightly, they're underwater. A grin spread slowly across my face. Because now I had the leverage I needed. For the next few weeks, I became a ghost in my own house. Quiet, polite, invisible. While they kept pretending everything was fine. Betrayal played domestic goddess. My parents bragged about their modern upgrade to every neighbor and cousin. They'd finally achieved what they always wanted. A picture-perfect family, camera-ready kitchen, and a golden child to show off. And me? I was the silent investment that made it all possible. Until I started unmaking it. The first thing I did was apply for a job transfer, out of state. Then I withdrew the remaining money I had in savings, what little they hadn't drained, and moved it into a private credit union under a new LLC name. Zoe helped me find a buyer's agent, not in the city, not even close. Somewhere quiet, affordable, overlooked. Somewhere I could actually own something, far from the noise. I closed in 37 days. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And then I mailed a letter, not a text, not an email, an old-school envelope addressed to my parents' house. It contained one photo. Me, standing on my new porch, keys in one hand, middle finger in the other. They never responded. But 2 days later, my mom left a voicemail that started with a cold. "So you're just going to move out without telling us?" And ended with, "After all we did for you." I didn't call back. I didn't need to, because for the first time in years, I slept like a rock in a home with no ghosts. But don't worry, this isn't the revenge. This is just the setup, because I haven't told you yet what I found in the mortgage documents, the ones that proved the house still had one secret owner, and it wasn't Betrayal. To be continued. The paperwork came in a plain white envelope, no return address, just my name printed neatly across the front. I'd requested it weeks ago through the county records office, the official title deed for my parents' house. The same house they'd taken my down payment to remodel, the one I'd grown up in, the one Betrayal now called our forever home, like she hadn't moved in 6 months ago. I sat at the dining table in my new house, a quiet little 2-bedroom with peeling paint and drafty windows, and flipped to the 3rd page of the deed. There it was, right there in black ink, from back when I was 19 and naive and had just received a modest inheritance from my grandfather, $15,000. A gift he'd quietly willed to me, bypassing my parents entirely. They'd asked me to invest it in something smart. So, I had. I was listed as a 15% co-owner on the title, a minor share. Not controlling, but binding. I stared at the document like it had teeth. It had been 10 years. They hadn't told me it was still valid. They hadn't even mentioned it when they drained my bank account, because they forgot. Or worse, they never thought I'd remember. I called Zoe that night, put her on speaker as I paced barefoot across my unfinished floors. "I need to know what 15% gets me," I said. "In a house like theirs, technically?" "You have rights," she said carefully. "You can request accounting, file a partition action, or block any major property changes if you want." "But why?" I paused. My fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. "Because they treated me like I didn't matter. And now I'm going to remind them I do. I started small petty, maybe, but it felt righteous. I mailed a letter, certified, notarized, to the address I still legally co-owned. As 15% property holder of the residence at 48 Holland Lane, I hereby request a full ledger of all remodeling expenses paid using my financial contributions. I also require proof of agreement for any structural changes made to the property within the last 18 months. Failure to provide documentation may result in legal arbitration. I signed it, and I mailed 2 copies, one to my parents and one addressed specifically to Mr. and Mrs. Eric Dawson, aka my sister Betrayal and her smug husband. 3 days later, my mom texted, "What is this nonsense?" Followed by, "Are you seriously threatening us with legal action over your own home?" And then the kicker, "We raised you. Is this the thanks we get?" No apology, no explanation. Just guilt. Classic. I didn't reply. Instead, I filed a formal notice of interest with the county. Zoe helped me draft it. It didn't stop them from living there, but it meant they couldn't sell, refinance, or transfer anything without my signature. Then I waited. And oh, did it unravel fast. A week later, Betrayal showed up at my door, uninvited. I nearly laughed when I saw her standing there on my front step. Chanel crossbody bag slung over her shoulder, freshly blown-out hair tucked behind her ears. "I thought you said this place was temporary," she sneered, glancing around at the paint-chipped siding. "Didn't realize this was the big I made it house." I leaned on the doorframe, calm, amused. Still better than living in a house you didn't pay for. Her face twitched. "I'm here because you're being ridiculous. That letter? The county filing? You're ruining everything. We're trying to refinance so we can buy the house from Mom and Dad." I tilted my head. "So you want to buy it?" She nodded. "Yes, and your name is holding things up." My smile sharpened. "Good. Let it." She blinked. "What?" "You thought I forgot. That I'd just disappear. But I didn't. And now, I'm not signing anything, unless I get my money back." Her voice rose, sharp. "You're punishing the whole family over some stupid kitchen?" "No," I said. "I'm punishing you for acting like I never existed." And I closed the door. Back inside, I collapsed onto the couch, heart pounding. But this wasn't revenge yet. This was just leverage. Because now that I had their attention, now that I had a stake, I was going to make them feel every dollar they took. And I wasn't stopping at the house. Because when I dug deeper into the county filings, I found something even juicier. Something involving my grandfather's will, the one my uncle swore was just a simple inheritance split. Only, it wasn't. I found the copy of Grandpa's will in the dusty corner of an online archive. Technically, it wasn't even difficult, just buried in public probate records under the old case number. But when I opened it, what I found made my jaw go slack. He had left me more than just that small inheritance I'd received at 19. Much more. Second property. A modest duplex on the outskirts of town. Paid off. Quiet neighborhood. It had been mine the whole time. Except, no one told me. Instead, the property had been managed for years by my Uncle Neil, who handled family estate stuff after Grandpa passed. According to the documents, he'd told the probate court that I'd verbally declined the property and asked for it to be temporarily managed under his name. There was no such conversation. He forged a letter. A fake statement supposedly from me, no signature, no verification, saying I didn't want the responsibility of property ownership. Then he rented it out for 9 years, collected every dollar, paid the bare minimum in taxes, and never said a word. I sat frozen on the floor of my tiny home, a stack of printouts spread around me like a battlefield. They all did it. My parents, my uncle, my sister. They looked at my silence and saw permission. My sacrifices were expected. My money was available. My name? Optional. And now they were all tangled in their own greed. My uncle, profiting off a lie. My parents, tied to a house they couldn't touch. My sister, trying to turn stolen marble countertops into her legacy. And me? I was done staying quiet. That Monday, I walked into the county assessor's office with every form, every notarized document, and every ounce of restraint I had left. The clerk, an older woman with chipped red nails and a kind smile, glanced at the file I handed her. "This is a claim of property mismanagement?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, I said calmly. And I want a fraud investigation launched. She gave a slow nod. You came prepared. I've been preparing for years. That same afternoon, I filed a formal demand for accounting against my uncle's Property Management LLC, the shell company he'd used to collect rent on the duplex. Through Zoe's real estate lawyer friend, I discovered tenants were still living there. Quiet couple. Paid in cash. So I went to visit. The woman who answered the door was kind, older, probably in her 50s. When I introduced myself and explained the situation, her mouth dropped. You're the real owner? She asked. But we've been renting from Neil since 2015. I'm so sorry, I said. You've done nothing wrong, but I want you to know the lease will stay intact. I just need to reclaim what's mine. She teared up. He raised the rent 3 times in 5 years, said taxes were higher. We had to choose between heating and groceries last winter. My stomach twisted. It wasn't just theft. It was exploitation. 3 weeks later, the first letter landed in my uncle's mailbox. Notice of property reclamation and request for immediate cessation of rental income. He called me less than 10 minutes after the delivery. His voice was sharp, cold. You've always been ungrateful, I laughed. You've always been a thief. I managed that house, paid for the roof repair, kept it clean. You'd have let it rot. It was never yours to manage. Silence. Then a low threat. You know, your parents were right. You were never cut out for real responsibility. I smiled. We'll see about that in court. At night, I lay awake. Sometimes. Not with regret, but with clarity. They underestimated me. All of them. Because I'd always been the helper. The tag-along. The good daughter who didn't ask for much. The one who skipped vacations so she could pay down debt. The one who stayed quiet when her room was turned into storage for wedding gifts that weren't hers. But now I had 2 properties. Now I had proof of fraud. Now I had leverage they couldn't ignore, and I wasn't done yet. Because I hadn't told them what I planned to do with the duplex. Not yet. The first thing I did after reclaiming legal ownership of the duplex was change the locks. It was symbolic, quiet, necessary. I left a note for the tenants, soft-spoken Miss Clara and her husband, who'd been living there for nearly a decade without ever meeting their real landlord. I reassured them the lease would remain unchanged. In fact, the only change would be lowering their rent. They cried. No one had ever lowered their rent before, but I wasn't doing it for applause. I was doing it because for once in my life, I wasn't letting my family decide what kind of person I got to be. 2 weeks after the reclamation filing, a letter arrived at my parents' address, addressed to me. My mom forwarded it without a word, probably because she knew what it was. Inside, a formal request from Brielle's mortgage officer. A release of my ownership rights on the family home. It had all the legal polish, all the sweet talk, all the passive-aggressive guilt-tripping built into corporate language. To facilitate the clean transfer of title for Ms. Brielle Dawson, we respectfully request the removal of the minority co-owner, who has been non-resident for over 1 year. I stared at that line. Non-resident. As if they hadn't taken my down payment. As if they hadn't treated me like a background character in my own family story. As if the kitchen built with my money had nothing to do with me anymore. I turned the page over, signed it, then wrote in big looping letters at the bottom. Request denied. Property division contingent upon $38,000 reimbursement plus 15% interest. Over 18 months, and I mailed it back. No explanation, no apology, no drama, just math. I didn't hear from Betrayal for 6 days. Then came the explosion. A voicemail, 3 minutes long. Mostly her screaming into the receiver about how selfish I was, how I'd always played the victim, how her family needed that house. Not our family. Hers. At the end, her voice cracked. "Don't do this. Please. You're tearing us apart." I replayed that line 3 times, then deleted the message. Around that time, the whispers started making their way through the extended family. Aunt Lorraine called me randomly, pretending to check in, but I could tell from the tone she already had the story. "They said you filed a claim on the family house?" "Mm-hmm. And that you're suing Neil?" "Not yet." Long pause. "Well," she sighed. "You were always a little sensitive, weren't you?" I smiled, cold. "No, Lorraine. I was always just polite. There's a difference." A week later, Zoe called with a suggestion. "Have you considered leveraging the duplex?" "What do you mean?" She cleared her throat. "You could convert it into a legal business, offer it as transitional housing, use it as a tax write-off, or you could legally offer your parents and Betrayal an opportunity." I sat forward. "What kind of opportunity?" "Market buyout." That's when the idea clicked. Offer them the chance to buy me out, not as a favor, but as a transaction, with interest, on my terms. Give them a deadline, make it real. Put the pressure on. I sent the offer in a sealed envelope. To Brian and Margaret Harlow, Betrayal Dawson. From M. Harlow, minority owner. In acknowledgement of the recent title transfer attempt and remodeling financed using funds unlawfully removed from my private savings account, I hereby offer you the opportunity to buy out my 15% stake in the property located at 48 Holland Lane. Purchase price, $68,000. Payment deadline, 90 days from receipt of this letter. Failure to comply will result in a partition lawsuit. I signed it and sent it by registered mail. 3 days later, Dad showed up at my doorstep. Not Mom, not Betrayal, just Dad. In a pressed shirt he never used to wear for me, holding a manila folder like it might bite him. "I just want to talk," he said, eyes tired. So I let him. He stepped inside, looked around at my small house like it personally offended him, like it made him sad. Then he spoke. "I didn't know what your mother did with the money." I raised an eyebrow. "You signed the check." He blinked, looked down. "She told me it was for Betrayal's share of the wedding debt, that we'd pay you back, that it was temporary." "So why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't think you'd leave." I folded my arms. "You thought I'd stay in the house you stole from me?" He didn't answer. I walked to the door. "This is your chance. Buy me out, or get ready for court." He hesitated, then handed me the folder. Inside was a partial cashier's check, $20,000. "More will come," he said, "but give us time." I shut the door without responding. The clock was ticking now. They had 67 days. And I was already drafting the paperwork for a forced sale, just in case. Because this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about proof. That I existed. That I mattered. That they couldn't cut me out and expect silence. Not this time. By week 4, my mother finally cracked. She didn't show up like my father did. She didn't call either. She emailed. Subject line: "This has gone far enough. No greeting. Just 2 paragraphs of carefully chosen words, the kind you'd expect from a mother who still thinks guilt is currency. She said I was making a scene, embarrassing the family, and hurting Brielle's chances at building a future. Then came the kicker. We've always supported you in our own way, even if it wasn't perfect. But dragging this into court will just destroy everything left between us. There it was, our own way, meaning, we'll help you as long as it doesn't inconvenience us, cost us, or force us to treat you like you matter. I didn't reply, but I saved the email, carefully, alongside the notarized letters, the title records, and the withdrawal screenshots, all neatly categorized in a digital folder labeled Leverage. Day 43. Zoe called. "You're not going to like this," she said. "They listed the house." I sat up straight. "What?" 48. Holland. They listed it yesterday afternoon. Under Brielle's name only. My pulse thundered. But they can't. Sell without me? I know, that's the point. They're either trying to pressure you, or they're hoping you won't notice. I scheduled a visit. I didn't call first. Saturday morning, I drove up to the house I used to call home and rang the doorbell like a stranger. Brielle answered in a silk robe, holding a mug that said, "Wifey." When she saw me, her mouth twisted. "We're not doing this." "Too late," I said calmly, stepping past her into the front room. "You listed a property you don't fully own. That's fraud." She followed behind me like a storm cloud. "It's not fraud if you're planning to release it anyway." I turned on my heel. "Who said I was?" She blinked. "You sent a buyout offer." "Correct, and the clock's still ticking." I looked around. The marble counters gleamed. There were new light fixtures, art on the walls. It was no longer our parents' house. It had been staged, like I never lived there, like I never existed. "I'm pregnant," Brielle said suddenly, her voice soft but calculated. I froze. It wasn't joy she was offering. It was manipulation. Another emotional weight tossed into the mix like a brick wrapped in pink ribbon. I need this house. It's not just about me anymore. I looked her dead in the eye. "So was it your baby, or the backsplash that cost me my down payment?" Her face went pale. "I'm not the villain," she whispered. "No," I said coldly. "You're just the one who smiled while they buried me." I left her standing there, hands trembling on the banister of a staircase I'd vacuumed 1,000 times. Day 59. I served the formal partition notice. Legally, it meant that if they didn't complete the buyout by day 90, I would sue for the house. To be forcibly sold and my 15% extracted from the profit, it would be public, it would be ugly, and it would mean that everything they tried to steal quietly would now come undone loudly. My uncle tried calling next. "Come on," he said, as if we were old friends. "You're not seriously dragging your family through the courts." "I'm just asking for what's mine." "You're punishing everyone because you couldn't afford your own home." I laughed bitterly. "I own 2 now." Silence. "You think this makes you strong?" he said. "It makes you spiteful." "No," I said, hanging up. "It makes me free." Day 70. A second partial check arrived. $15,000. Enclosed was a typed note from my father. "This is everything we could liquidate. For now. Please don't escalate this. No apology. No mention of the full amount due. Just desperation in corporate font. Still $33,000 short." But something else arrived that day too. A notice from the county court. The fraud investigation into my uncle's mishandling of the duplex had been escalated. They'd subpoenaed tax records, lease documents, and tenant statements. If he failed to comply, he could face criminal charges. I sat in my car with the envelope in my hands, heart pounding. I had power now, I had truth, and they had fear. They took everything they could from me, but I was about to take something they never saw coming. Not the house, not the money, the narrative. Because after everything, I wasn't just fighting to be heard. I was writing the ending. Day 73, I walked into the bank alone, holding both partial cashier's checks my parents had sent, the $20,000 and the $15,000. Together, $35,000. A number that once would have made me flinch with guilt. Now it barely moved me. The teller looked up with a polite smile. Depositing today? No, I said. I'd like to hold these in a separate escrow file, for a pending dispute. She blinked. Legal? I nodded. Very. Day 76. Uncle Neil cracked. He emailed me just after midnight, a PDF attachment and a message so short, it was practically an SOS. I've signed the transfer. The property's yours. Just don't push for an audit. I opened the file. It was real. A full relinquishment of claim over the duplex. My name listed alone now, as sole property holder. Finally uncontested. Finally legal. He hadn't even bothered to ask for reimbursement for management fees, probably because he knew what would come up if he did. I stared at the screen, blinking. That duplex, the one they buried in lies, was now officially mine. No family interference, no catch, just mine. And I knew exactly what to do with it. By day 78, the ad was live. Transitional housing program for young women exiting financial abuse or family estrangement, affordable rent. Counseling connections. Move-in ready. Quiet, safe, furnished. It filled in 4 days. Ms. Clara stayed on one side. A 22-year-old named Raina moved into the other, fresh out of a controlling foster-to-adoption situation, with barely a duffel bag and a part-time job. When she asked why, I offered her the room so cheap I just smiled, because someone should have done this for me when I was your age. Day 80. Brielle emailed me. Subject: please don't take our home. Attached was an ultrasound photo. She'd even blurred the name on the top to make it look artsy, like it belonged on a baby announcement. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because it was always like this. Always an emotional trap. A sentimental weapon. She used her life milestones like they were fire extinguishers, meant to put out whatever fire she caused. But this time, she'd set it all ablaze herself. Day 85. Zoe called. They've relisted the house, lowered the price. Why? Because no one's biting. That fraud flag you filed? It shows up on title searches now. I smiled so wide it hurt. They'll never sell it without my clearance, I said. Nope. So they have 5 days left to pay the balance or risk court and a failed sale. Exactly. She paused. You okay? I leaned back on my porch swing, looking out at the overgrown garden I hadn't gotten around to fixing yet. For the first time, I meant it when I said, yeah, I really am. Day 87. They showed up, all of them. My mom, my dad, and Brielle, pregnant belly prominent under a tight cream sweater, standing at the foot of my driveway like they owned the right to be there. I didn't come out. I watched through the screen door. They rang the bell, knocked, waited. I let them stew, then finally stepped out, slow and calm. My mother was the first to speak. "You've made your point." My dad added, "Let's stop this before it gets worse." And Brielle, always the closer, stepped forward, eyes glassy, voice small. "You win, okay? Just let us keep the house." I tilted my head. "No, I earned the win. You just finally noticed." She flinched. My mom stiffened. "We brought the final check." She held out an envelope. I didn't take it. "Put it in the mailbox," I said, "and leave." "Is this really who you want to be?" my dad asked. I looked each of them in the eye. "No, this is who you made me become." And I walked back inside. Didn't slam the door. Didn't cry. Just closed it behind me and locked it. Day 90. I deposited the final $33,000, Zoe confirmed. The house was now fully Brielle's. Clean title. My name removed. But not before I had one last clause notarized. A lien for $38,000. If they ever sold the house again, I got that money back. With interest. Because you don't erase me without a cost. And you don't build your dream home out of my sacrifice without leaving a trail. Day 120. I drove past 48 Holland Lane for the last time. The lawn was yellowed. The flower beds, once meticulously tended by my younger self, had been replaced with generic landscaping bark and solar lights. Everything looked polished but hollow, like the family that lived inside it. My family. I didn't slow down. I didn't glance at the mailbox. I just kept going, because I wasn't curious anymore. I wasn't waiting to be let in. I had my own keys now. The final lien paperwork had been processed. The deed on the duplex had been fully updated in my name. No shadows, no co-signers, no hidden tricks. Uncle Neil had signed away the last of his rights, most likely praying the court wouldn't dig any deeper into his rental scam. And the Holland house? My name was gone. But my signature remained where it mattered. The lien was a silent witness to everything they tried to erase. I spent the next few weeks transforming the duplex, not into some luxury rental, not into a cash cow, but into something mine. The walls got fresh coats of warm paint. We fixed the loose railings. I had Raina help pick the furniture, and she chose colors she never had growing up. Sage, plum, gold. Happy colors, she called them. Ms. Clara crocheted new curtains, said it gave her something to do with her hands again. She hadn't smiled like that in years. We turned the duplex into more than housing. We turned it into healing. At night, I sat on the porch of my house. Not the duplex, not the ghost house of my childhood, but the little fixer-upper I bought on my own. It wasn't glamorous. The floorboards still creaked. The garden was still more weeds than roses. But it was quiet, and no one could take it from me. Not with fake promises. Not with guilt. Not with blood ties wrapped around a knife. Brielle never reached out again. Last I heard, she had the baby. They named her something sweet and soft, like a peace offering. I didn't go to the baby shower. I wasn't invited anyway. My parents sent a Christmas card that year. Just a photo, no note. Their smiles looked strained, as if held together by the very silence they tried to use against me for years. I didn't send one back, but I didn't need to, because I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for them to change. I wasn't hoping for their praise or a seat at their table. I built my own table now, and when I look around at the people who sit at it, young women reclaiming their lives, neighbors who bring coffee and know my name, I don't feel spite. I feel something else. Peace. Because in the end, they thought stealing my down payment would keep me small, but it made me powerful. They thought I'd beg. I made them pay. They thought they were cutting me off, but I was finally free, and no matter how many renovations they do, no matter how many lies they tell, they will always remember they used my down payment, and I turned it into a legacy.